Chef Julia Dunaway, and today I'm going to be making something I really enjoy eating, and it's called a poke bowl. But this time I'm using tofu instead of the typical ingredient, which is fish, usually raw fish. And I saw somebody had posted a picture of a tofu poke bowl that they had gotten in Hawaii, and they were talking about it, and it fascinated me because it looks so simple. It was just tofu and a few ingredients and this really unusual looking seaweed. But then when I looked into it, the tofu was deep fried. So I thought, oh no, I can't have that. Gotta figure out a way to make this poke bowl with tofu that's not fried, because I eat a whole food, plant-based, no oil kind of diet. So I messed around and came up with a way to make this really beautiful tofu poke bowl with not fried tofu. It's baked tofu. So I wanted to make that for you today because it's a pretty simple dish and it's packed with so much flavor, and it's one of those things that when I eat it, it just makes me smile because it has all my favorite flavors, a soy sauce, and it has rice, and it has some hot peppers because I like hot chili peppers, but it has everything I like in it. And I can use a few things from the garden, and it's just something I like to eat. Now, poke bowls are popular in America now. However, it hasn't been that way for many years. I think before, really they were something you would get in Hawaii, and they tended to be very simple. They were just, cut up pieces, cubes of ahi tuna over warm rice, cold fish, raw fish over rice. The fish was marinated in sesame oil, soy sauce, some scallions, some sweet onion. Some of the different versions I read about had like a special nut that's almost like a macadamia nut, Hawaiian sea salt, ginger, they have all these different varieties, but the simplest traditional ones just had a few ingredients, mainly focused on really fresh cubes of fish over rice. Well, I want mine to be focused on really good tasting tofu over the rice with a few ingredients. Now, that doesn't sound all that unusual, but what happened to me was once poke became popular and it spread to the United States, they started having restaurants that I've been to and tried to have poke at. Like there's one called Poke in Fort Worth where I live, Texas. I went to the same chain on Venice Beach a couple years ago, and they had tuna. Back then I was eating fish once in a while. And then there's one, I can't remember the name of it, a Poke Stop or something in Carrollton, and it's okay, but none of these places have anything that is plant-based other than the vegetables they put in with the other stuff. And if they did have something like the local one in Fort Worth, they have tofu, but it's pad thai tofu, and it's some kind of tofu and peanut butter sauce. That's not what the flavor profile I'm looking for. So even the places that are here now have some type of tofu, but the other place had like tomato tofu, and it was awful. I don't even want to talk about it. So I couldn't even get it at the poke restaurants. And the other thing they've done, which I find appalling personally, is these poke places have turned it into like Chipotle for poke, which what they have is they have all these little tubs of ingredients, every kind of thing. They have corn and onions and edamame and carrots and every kind of thing you can think about. And so then what people do is they get their protein, one of 5 or 6 kinds of fish, and they even have chicken and stuff. And then they start piling on all these random vegetables and sauces and mayonnaise, and it just becomes this giant glob of food on top of rice. And to me, my experience with that is everything is muddied. It's like everything is all together in an unappetizing big kind of glop. I don't like that. That's not my thing. So I wanted to make something that is simple, delicious, and you can taste the ingredients, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to start with the tofu, and I've got my tofu. It's just your typical organic, extra firm tofu. I get this, my husband gets it for me at Walmart because I don't like to go to Walmart. And a lot of times it's sold out, which I think is hilarious. He'll go and say, they're sold out of your tofu. And we live in a small town. You would not think tofu would be sold out at Walmart, but we think a restaurant goes there. I drained all the water out. There's a lot of water in that box of tofu. I drained all the water out. I wrapped it in a paper towel, and then I pressed my tofu. I'll show you how I did it. I pressed it I wrapped it in a cloth like this, just a cotton kitchen cloth, and then I set it under a cutting board topped with a heavy book, and I just leave it there for like 20 minutes. And this is my Bon Appetit dessert book, which is heavy. I don't use that book much, if at all, but it does the job for this. I know they sell tofu presses, and I just found that they kind of tended to like crush up some of the edges of the tofu, so I quit using the tofu press. I'm going to cut my tofu in half. I'm going to cut each half in half, and then I'm going to cut each of those halves in half. That way I get 8 equal pieces. And then I'm going to set those pieces on their side, and then I'm going to cut each of these 2-piece sections into 3 pieces, because I'm trying to get small cubes, because the poke just means to cut. And so the typical poke bowls have diced fish, and it's like 1/4 inch, let's say half inch dice. So it's not diced in great big chunks, it's diced in little, pieces like this. So that's what I'm gonna do. So I've got all these things, they're in the 3 slices, and I'm going to rotate it, and then I'm gonna cut this whole block in half. Then I'm gonna cut each of these into thirds, and then that gives me all my little 1/2 inch cubes, all the same size. Over here, same thing, I'm gonna cut this into 3 equal pieces. And there, in that short a period of time, I have this big thing of equal pieces of cubed tofu. And then I'll put it in this bowl, separated a little bit, but you see they're all perfectly even little cubes of tofu. It makes me very happy. But we have to marinate them. And what I'm going to use for my marinade, just for the tofu part, is low sodium soy sauce. I'm going to use about 4 tablespoons of that. The sound you hear in the background is my boxer Mochi. I can hear him over there snoring gently. Sometimes it's loud, but I can still hear him. It's kind of gentle. Then we're going to use, you can use tahini. I have this Mighty Sesame tahini, but I also bought this, it's a organic golden sesame paste from Japan, and it is kind of like tahini, but this is kind of like tahini, top shelf tahini. Like when you get top shelf tequila. This is like the super duper tahini. It's kind of pricey, so I wouldn't use it every day, but this is going to be my special dish, so I'm going to use this super duper tahini or sesame paste for this dish. So I'm only using a tablespoon, and I'll use it again for my marinade. I'll use it when I'm doing the other part. So, and then we're going to get some fresh ginger in here. I have a nice thing of organic ginger I got from Whole Foods yesterday. And this is a really nice looking ginger. It's very clean and it looks really fresh. Sometimes you get ginger in the grocery store and it's all dried out, and the ginger is real pale, like it's been in a warehouse somewhere for a couple years. So I'm just kind of peeling a little bit of it because I don't need much. But yeah, I'm going to grate the ginger. And if you don't have fresh ginger, you can use ginger powder in this marinade. It works quite well too. And then I have my tool. I just like to use the microplane. It's like a micro grater zester kind of tool. And it makes it nice and finely grated, because big chunks of ginger can be a little off-putting. Then I just slap it against the cutting board. Get that out of the way. All right. So we'll stick the ginger in here. And if we wanted to, we could put garlic in here, but I'm just gonna keep it with ginger today. Sometimes I put like garlic and ginger in this marinated tofu, but I put my ginger in with the tofu instead of in my trash bowl. That was really funny. I looked over there and said, what the heck is in there? All right, so I'm gonna mix this up, put it in with the tofu. Hopefully this is the right spot for it. And then what I do with this is I'm just gonna let it marinate. I need a spoon. I'm just gonna let it marinate for, usually I give it like 20 minutes. I'm gonna mix it up with a spoon. But you can go longer. You can marinate it for hours. Gotta break it up a little bit. You can marinate this tofu for hours if you wanted to. It doesn't really do anything to it. It just kind of makes it a little bit more intense in flavor. But yeah, I'm breaking it up a little bit. All right, so sometimes, you know, I've done it before in a plastic container, a Ziploc bag, whatever you have, it doesn't really matter, but you get the idea. Marinate your tofu at least about 20 minutes. And then the next thing we're gonna do is, and then we're gonna, after we marinate it, we bake it in the oven. And I'll talk about that in a minute, but we're gonna get our ogo, our seaweed that we're gonna be using for the dish, in some cold water. So I've got to get that started. And this is one of the ingredients in the traditional poke, is this kind of seaweed called ogo. And I ordered it on Amazon because you can't find it in the local store. I've never seen it before. And I thought it was going to be kind of like wakame seaweed. I'm going to put some cold water in here. It takes about 5 minutes to rehydrate. And I just use like a big tablespoon because a little goes a long way. You don't want to overpower your dish with too much of this. So I'm going to set it right here. But with Japanese food, I've used a lot of wakame seaweed, which is a green seaweed that's in miso soup. And it tends to expand a lot and it gets kind of soft. But the ogo, what's cool about it is it maintains the texture. It's got a little chewy texture, which I found really nice. So I like that a lot. So that's going to be an ingredient we're going to use in our bowl. So let's talk a little bit about how we make our topping, our poke, with our tofu. So like I said, we marinate the tofu and then we'll put it on a sheet pan and bake it for about, I'd say 18 to 20 minutes at 400 degrees. So I'm not going to put it on my baking sheet right now because it's not marinated long enough, but this is my baking sheet that I would, after about 20 minutes, I'll put it on there. And what I ended up with is this, 20 minutes, I think it was 18, of baking my tofu in a 400 degree oven. And you see it's this nice kind of a light brown color. So this is the baked tofu, and it's okay that it's cold because remember, poke is cold ingredients on warm rice. So the tofu can be cold, but it's not fried. I'm gonna put it in my bowl. The tofu is not fried and it's not cold because I've seen both recommendations where somebody will say, oh, well, just use cold tofu, you know, like raw tofu out of the box, which you can eat, it's edible. But I don't really like that. I don't find that very appealing. So I was looking for a way to make this taste really good to me, and the sesame ginger style tofu tastes really good. So what else are we gonna add to that? We're gonna add a couple of green onions. And I saw several recipes where they said to use scallions and Maui sweet onions. But I don't think it needs both kind of onions. I think the scallions will be onions enough. So I'm slicing the scallions really thin because I don't like gigantic thick chunks of scallions. But if you really love onions and you wanted to use a sweet onion in this, then a really good sweet onion to use is the Texas onions. In Texas we have sweet onions, and I think they have them in Georgia, you know, they're all over the place, but you can find them in the grocery store. They're just called sweet yellow onions. So a little bit of sweet yellow onion, or I've seen other versions where they use red onion. So a red onion would be good in this. And then we can add a little bit of fresh ginger to our tofu mixture now. So we're gonna add this ginger, but we don't want a lot of it because remember, you know, with ginger, it could be overpowering if you put too much in. So we're gonna put the equivalent of maybe, let's say a half a teaspoon. Because I have some friends that they could eat ginger raw. They could just, you know, munch on that. My walking partner, she puts so much ginger in her smoothies that her husband just gags. He's like, oh, all you can taste is ginger. And I'm kind of that person that doesn't want to taste nothing but ginger, so I don't use a lot. So go easy on the ginger unless you're like my friend who could just eat it raw. And so this is like not even a teaspoon. And if you're a super ginger lover, you can put more ginger on your poke bowl. And this is Sushi Ginger. And so I'm not going to put this on mine because remember, I'm not a big ginger lover, but I got it out because people that love ginger like this on their bowl. So Sushi Ginger. And the reason it's pale colored and not bright pink is because it doesn't have any dyes in it. Because Sushi Ginger that's got color, it's pink or red or whatever, that's the reason it's like that is because there's some kind of dye in it. So if you're trying to, you know, eat organic without dyes in your food, you know, it's good to get the kind that doesn't have any color. Okay, so the next thing is some of our sesame, either tahini, mighty sesame tahini, or you could use the super premium stuff. I'm going to use the super premium stuff just because I want to. And I'm going to pour out a tablespoon of that. Pour it over this. And a tablespoon of my soy sauce. And I'm using the low sodium soy sauce, but there's a Hawaiian brand of soy sauce called Aloha soy sauce that I had some friends who lived in Hawaii and that's all they used. And I've seen it in the Asian supermarket, the Aloha soy sauce. I always get the same kind. I always get the Kikkoman reduced sodium one. So that's what I'm going to use because, you know, I'm trying to use the reduced sodium if I can. Okay, we can put in a couple of sesame seeds. I'm not going to put a lot of sesame seeds in here because I think that can be overpowering. So I'm just going to sprinkle some because it's already got the sesame paste. And then we're going to put some Hawaiian salt in here. So I've got 3 options. I have this kind of red, black, or white. I think I'm going to use the red. And this is imported from Hawaii. Got it on Amazon. But I'm not going to use like a whole teaspoon because again, salt is salty. So I'm going to put this amount as probably like 1/4 of a teaspoon. But if you're a salt lover and you want to use a whole teaspoon, you can. And you can switch it up and use all these different colors. They have such a good taste. They're kind of crunchy and it's just really a great taste in there. Okay, and then we can put in our seaweed so you could see what's happened after 5 minutes. It sat here and it rehydrated and now it's all kind of fluffed out. So we have to drain it, get the water out of it. And then what I usually do with this kind of thing is the best way to really drain it is to put it on a paper towel and kind of blot it dry because I don't want to put all this wet stuff inside the tofu. So we'll just kind of blot it a little bit. And it's okay if it's not dry, but I don't want the extra water watering down my beautiful tofu poke. And the other thing we can do with this is we can cut it a little bit so it's not such big pieces, but this doesn't look too big. I'll cut it in half and then we'll put it in here. But see how that tiny amount of seaweed bloomed into this big, huge, 1 tablespoon of that dry seaweed turned into at least 2 tablespoons of it once it was moistened. And it kind of looks purple. You know, when you get it out, you think it's black, but it's not really black. It's more like purple. Okay, so I've got all this in my bowl. Use my cooking chopsticks to mix it up. So you can see that it's got lots of color. It's got the ginger. I'm trying to mix that up a little bit more. And it's got all the components of something that could be really tasty. Now, we have some options at this point. Depending on your taste preferences, you can make this spicy. So what I would like to do, because I'm a person that likes spice, is I just pick these out of my garden. And this is a serrano chili pepper. And so I'm gonna put the serrano chili in there because I really like hot chilies. Now there's people that probably would hate this because they don't like really hot things. So I'm gonna put half of the chili pepper in here and chop it up so it's not overpowering with hot chilies. I have a friend, again, my walking partner, and when I was telling her what I was gonna make today, she said, ooh, I don't like hot peppers in my food. So in a nod to her, we'll put fewer peppers in there than I normally would put, so it's not overpowering. The other options you have for the hot, spicy flavor in your poke bowl, or you can use things like, I've got some things here on my tray. I've got the sriracha, and I use the yellowbird sriracha because it uses organic ingredients, no added sugar, no weird dyes or chemicals. We could use togarashi, which is a 7 spice mix. It has red pepper, so it's spicy. We could put that in there, which is good. Or we could just put red chili flakes or sambal olik, which is like a red chili sauce. So you can make it as spicy as you want it, but we're not going to add any more spice to it because I think that one serrano pepper is enough. So we have our poke mixture that's going to go on our rice, but we're not done yet because we're going to construct our bowl. Oh, and I was going to show you this just in case. I ordered this just to see what it was. This is a poke mix. You can get this. This was an Amazon thing. It has Hawaiian salt, Wakame seaweed, and red chili pepper. And you could just take this mixture. You could rehydrate the Wakame seaweed. It's got the sea salt and red chili, and add it to your tofu and with a little soy sauce or whatever. But don't make the mistake I did and add all the salt, because I ended up with a really salty bowl of tofu. It tasted good, but I learned my lesson. It was like, why did I pour all of that in that bowl? I didn't need all of that salt. So that could be handy if you don't want to buy a big bag of Wakame seaweed or whatever, but don't use all that salt. So how we're going to construct our bowl is I have my rice over here, and it's in my Japanese rice cooker. I have one of these Zojirushi Neuro Fuzzy rice cookers I've had for a few years. And yes, I know people make rice in Instant Pots, but you know, Japanese rice in Instant Pots, I don't think it turns out the way I like it every time. So I use my good old-fashioned rice cooker, and I'm using this premium short grain rice. It's like a sushi rice. This one is called Hitomebori. I get it at the Asian H-Mart supermarket. And the quality of this rice is superior. It's very small and it just cooks up really nicely. There's something about it that's good. So I'm making a 1 serving dish of this poke, kind of a generous serving. I probably wouldn't eat quite that much rice at one time, but let's say that I'm going to eat all that rice and make it look abundant. I like abundance in my food. So we're going to take that, and we have our mixture of tofu, and you can get the spoon. So we'll just spoon this on top. And there's not a lot of sauce in this because the sauce has become incorporated in the tofu, which is the way it's supposed to be. And you can see little flecks of ginger and things. This should be about 3 or 4 servings. But that's kind of plain. You know, you look at that and go, okay, well, so what? That looks kind of plain. Let's dress it up a little bit. We can put whatever else we want on here, but I don't want to make the style that I told you about that has everything but the kitchen sink in it. That's not appetizing. But I do like things like some thinly sliced cucumber, which I think makes it taste good. And this is one of those English hothouse cucumbers. And what I like to do with those is I like to just cut some of the peel off, not all of it, because this peel is edible and it doesn't taste bad, but I think it tastes better when you don't have so much peel on. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut some really thin pieces of cucumber. On the mandolin, that's not quite thin enough. That's too thick, okay. And this would be a selection sometimes in the poke places I've been to where they would have, you know, the cucumbers. So again, we don't need a ton of them, but a few cucumbers is a nice taste there. I'm not going to use all of these, so I'll set these aside. And then avocado, I think, adds a nice creaminess because I don't use things with dairy or oil. So I wouldn't be the person using some kind of aioli unless it was like a cashew aioli. But, you know, we're not going to put cashew aioli with our poke today. We could, but that's not something I have. But there's this big trend to put mayonnaise-based sauces on stuff a lot, which I'm not a big fan of that. So we don't need the mayonnaise-based sauces for this. You know, enjoy the sesame paste or the tahini, or that has kind of its own natural oil. So we really don't need the added oil that comes from mayonnaise. But I've seen that in these poke places where people are slathering on great big globs of mayonnaise. Okay, so we just have our avocado for creaminess. And then what else can we put on here? We can, if you like wasabi, I made up some wasabi from actual true wasabi. It was 100% genuine wasabi, not just horseradish and mustard, but freeze-dried wasabi, which is a green kind of a root vegetable. Hard to find it. So I'm going to put a little bit of that on the corner here, because I kind of like the flavor of wasabi in here, but you don't have to put that in. This is all, like I said, it's all up to the individual taste. And this is where we could add our little bit of pickled sushi ginger. I'm not going to, but you could have a little thing of that somewhere there. We could put a few more sesame seeds on here. Get the right one. Makes it look good. And then I have some teriyaki sauce that I make. I think it looks good. I might put just a little bit of my homemade teriyaki sauce on it for a little bit of sweet taste. But that's an option. You don't really have to do that to make it taste good. And another popular item is furikake. And I have 3 kinds. One you can get at Trader Joe's, and it's a seaweed, sesame seed sprinkle. And it kind of looks, so I'll put some on here so you can see what it looks like. It's really good on rice, but you could see little pieces of seaweed, black sesame seeds. So I have that kind. I have one from the Asian store, which is very similar. And then I got this at Whole Foods. It's spicy seaweed sprinkle. And it looks like it has real pieces of some kind of seaweed on here. It's like, you know, green seaweed. And I tasted it, and I thought this would be really good on my morning greens, because I ate a big serving of greens in the morning, and I put like a sesame sprinkle on the greens that I eat in the morning, and I thought, oh, that might be good on there. Okay, so we really don't need anything else, and this is my shichimi togarashi 7-spice powder. It's pretty. It's got kind of a red tinge to it, so we can put that on there. But it has a little spice to it. So basically, that is our poke bowl, and it doesn't have a lot of additional soy sauce or anything. And I know that, like, if I were to give this to my husband, he would immediately take the soy sauce bottle and pour it all over there. But if you take a bite of the tofu, and we'll do it. Put this on the serving plate. this tofu is in a sauce, and it's in a pretty strong sauce. So a bite of the tofu with a bite of the rice should be plenty of flavor as it is. And you shouldn't need to pour other sauces on top, but you know, there is a tendency for people to want to put more sauce on stuff. So if you have people that want to put more sauce on their food, you can have a bottle of soy sauce handy. So I'm going to taste it. I can taste all those flavors, the ginger, the soy sauce, the sesame, and I think it's perfect the way it is, so I wouldn't add anything to it. So I hope you make this delicious tofu poke bowl with not fried tofu, with baked tofu, full of flavor, full of fresh vegetables. And again, if you wanted to add more stuff, feel free to add your cooked edamame, corn, carrots, onions, anything you like you can add to this, but it doesn't have to be complicated. It could be this simple and this delicious. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video, Tofu Poke Bowl, and watch other videos, subscribe to my channel. I also have Instagram under Julia Dunaway. I have a Facebook page called Chef Julia, and you know, look me up on other forms of social media. And thank you for watching. Bye-bye.